1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Bill Wilson reports to us now from Chicago. The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucers. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Grizzell is the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like. From Fort Worth, Texas, where the object was first sent, Brigadier General Roger Ramey says that it is being shipped by air to the AAF Research Center at Wright Field, Ohio. A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet. In the meantime, General Ramey describes the object as being of flimsy construction, almost like a box tank. He says that it was so plastic that he was unable to determine whether it had a disc form, and he does not indicate its size. Ramey says that so far as can be determined, no one saw the object in the air, and he describes it as being made of some sort of tinfoil. Other Army officials say that further information indicates that the object had a diameter of about 20 to 25 feet, and that nothing in the apparent construction indicated any capacity for speed, and that there was no evidence of a power plant. The disc also appeared too flimsy to carry a man. Now, back to Taylor Grant in New York. There was important activity within the UN Security Council today.
Good AM, good PM, wherever and whenever on the planet you are currently located. You are now listening to Ancient Mysteries Revisited. We call it Revisited because a few years ago, myself and my co-host Katrina Hutchins had a show we called Ancient Mysteries, an Advanced Archaeology Review. And now, with my co-host...
Hello, I'm Rodney McGillvary, here to help Bruce out.
And now we are redoing the show, and it is on an FM station called WELT 95.7, and it will be aired at different times around the world because it'll be live streamed. And basically, we will be interviewing researchers, authors, archaeologists, videographers, and all others of those that are involved in researching and exploring the ancient mysteries and many modern mysteries of our planet and well beyond.
And Bruce had a show somewhat similar to this a couple years ago here in Fort Wayne, but he took a leave of absence. What happened to you, Bruce?
Well, basically, I was in the Philippines and Southeast Asia the last 2.5 years. Was having a lot of fun, but I also did a tour to Angkor Wat in April of 2017, where I had Dr. Sam Osmanovich, Danny Arwanto from Indonesia, Valerie Uvarov of Russia, Frank Jacobs, and Tonya Madenford. Videographers have done such videos as Unpacking for Mars, Packing for Mars, I think, actually. Klaus Dona was there. So it was an amazing tour, and then we did a 4-day conference in the Philippines. So yeah, that was a great time. I also attended a conference in November of that year in Jakarta, Indonesia, at the University of Jakarta, that had different speakers, such as Danny Arwanto, also Danny Hilman Natawajaja, who is the chief geologist on the Gunung Padang pyramid site in Java, which has been dated to over 25,000 years old. So, and I went over to Thailand and saw Ayakaya. And so, yeah, I've had a good time over there and a lot of beach time. So it's been fun.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. It sounds like you made a lot of different connections that could be useful for our show now.
Yes. Hopefully we'll get Danny Irwanto, Danny Hillman. Of course, Valerie. Hopefully Valerie will probably be in the next show. Frank Jacobs, Klaus, and all of them. And I guess since I mentioned it, we're also planning a Angkor Wat tour April of next year, 2020, which will have myself, John Shaughnessy, Alexander Koltipin, the Moscow University geologist. I'm very excited about that. We've never had a geologist on any of my tours. Vedic specialist Bebhu Dev Misra, which is always good to have anyone involved in the Vedic specialties because all the temples in that part of the world mostly are all Vedic related in one way or another, even the Buddhist temples. So I'm looking forward to that. Stay tuned on that information. We will also be having an add-on to the Plain of Jars in Laos.
We'll keep everybody updated on all of this on our Facebook page, which we'll announce that once it's fully finished, which should be soon. We got a bunch of ideas for our future shows covering various topics, and our primary center of conversation will be ancient mysteries.
Yeah, basically, the ancient mysteries of the world they just keep growing. I mean, they make more discoveries, which make more questions. And there's so many people now that are involved in researching and writing papers, books, and the plethora of cool theories out there is why we're here, because it's fun as well as informing to get that information out, because as we put all these theories together, we may just have a chance to get to the truth.
Good point. And that also leads to our very first guest, who's very knowledgeable in this topic.
Yes, as I said, we did a show. I'm thinking we did it early in 2016, about the same time. And I think after I left in October of that year, Katrina kept it on with Dave Shelton for many, many months also. And I guess we will just introduce you. Katrina, are you out there?
I am out here.
Very cool. Very cool.
Long time no speak.
Absolutely. Long time no see as well. And unfortunately, not being in the studio with you, I don't get a chance to see you again today, but it's awesome to be here speaking with you.
Yes. It was very strange. After I had moved overseas, most of you, not most of you, but many of you that are listening know that I have been living in the Philippines and Southeast Asia the last 2.5 years. And I really lost touch with Katrina about 2 years ago. And myself and Rodney had just decided to put the show back together. And lo and behold, I open up my Facebook one day and who is sending me a chat window?
It's like it was meant to be.
It's always good to reconnect.
Yes. Since I've been here, I've reconnected with people I've not seen in anywhere from 10 to 40 years. So, yeah, that's an understatement at best, Kat.
Well, you do not have to go all the way around the world to have some amazing adventures and experiences. So I'm glad things are working out for you here as well.
Yeah, well, since you're on there, and I guess we'll talk about that, you, I believe, had moved to Detroit about 1.5 to 2 years ago. How are things going up there? And just a brief comment on your situation and such.
Well, Detroit is probably, as far as I can tell, one of the most vibrant and dynamic cities in the United States. I have had nothing but positive experiences with people and places since the moment I got here. And the energy of the place is just magnetic. You really feel the vibe of the people and the city here whenever you leave your home. And the opportunities the international airport is here, so there's travel. They have rail service. You can take a cruise ship on the Detroit River. There's just anything and everything you might want to do. And of course, One of my favorite things about Detroit is that it is really an international meeting place for people coming to this country from every corner of the world.
Yes, I've entered that airport. I can't count how many times on my many trips overseas into Southeast Asia.
It seems like pure alchemy is happening to Detroit. It was a pretty crappy place, and now it's turning into gold.
Well, we are not the city of RoboCop any longer. And I'm glad for that, because I don't think I could be comfortable here under those circumstances. But yeah, it's a clean city, it's a safe city, it's a moving and dynamic city, and everywhere you go, if it's not moving, it's got art on it. And I just love being able to walk down the street and see the creativity and the expression of people from everywhere. It's just a beautiful thing.
That reminds me, when you're talking the art, I believe before I left, you had mentioned that you had been up there, and in one of the art museums was many of the original Sumerian carvings and such.
Oh, yes, they do. They have a really great, at the Detroit Institute of Art, they have a really great display of Sumerian tablets and also a bas-relief that was taken out of a temple. And it's stunning to be able to be so close to things. And it's also amazing to just be able to basically go downtown and see these slices of history that, as you said in your introduction, it didn't matter where they were from or when they were from. They're here now and they're accessible. And just what an opportunity, really, to see those things. And there is a theory, actually, that I've been working on since visiting the DIA, and unfortunately, it's not something I can explain very well on the radio because there are visuals that are needed to go along with it. But I've had some insights on a little bit of a mystery in ancient Egypt since I've been here, and I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get back overseas and put my theory to the test in the real world.
Cool. I'd say of all the places that the theories continue to change and advance would be the Egypt area.
Well, and it's one of those places too where the archaeology has not stopped. They are making discoveries, well, here recently, almost on a weekly basis there for a while, of various tombs that are in unbelievably great shape. And they're working to fast track these sites to make them as safe and accessible as possible so that they're open to the public what feels like immediately when you're talking about things in the span of archaeological time. Yeah,
oh, no doubt. I know Christopher Dunn in the last 2 years have done engineering tours there where he's taken as many as 30 engineers with him. And I'm still waiting for a lot of those results because they're not all put together yet. But I surely hope to have Chris on the show very soon, as well as visiting him because he's only about 3 hours away from Fort Wayne. And that will be a wonderful show. And we'll try to get you on as a guest host.
Oh, that would be amazing. And, I have to throw back a little bit to, I believe Chris Dunn was the first speaker you had at the first symposium that you put on.
Yes, he was the very first keynote of the first event that I did. I believe it was him, Frank Joseph, Tom Johnson, the geologist from the Serpent Mound area, and Roger Sugden, our good friend that's been involved with crop circles for many, many years.
Did you say he lives up in Detroit?
No, Christopher Dunn lives in the lower Chicago, Illinois area, not in Chicago, but in the basic area, but more rural.
Yeah, we should get a hold of him soon.
But you do have, other than me, you do have a friend in Detroit that has quite a bit of very specialized knowledge about Southeast Asia.
Yes, and have you been over to the temple, the Krishna temple that Mr. Stephen Knapp manages? Have you been there yet?
No, we have not been there yet.
Oh my gosh, Kat, it's the old Fisher Body family mansion. The Krishna's originally, I guess, got it for a song because, as we talked, how Detroit used to be, and it's spectacular. They had Mr. Fisher had a boat, 100-foot yacht that they would park in the mansion from the river, and the temple is definitely worth the trip. It's quite impressive. And you who are liking the vegan type food, it's some of those very spicy Indian Vedic food. I think me and Rodney might just get in the car after the show and go up there and eat.
Well, if you do, swing by and pick me up, because then you can show me where it is.
Sure.
I honestly have looked for Stephen and have looked for the temple on the internet, and I have been very unable to get any real information about location, times, how to get there. So yeah, I would need you to be my tour guide.
Have you talked to him recently, Bruce?
Yeah, I have not talked on the phone yet, but we've chat. He knows I'm here. I'll get the exit. It's the exit's the key, and it's a neighborhood. It's not real hard, but Stephen, if he's around, should be able to meet you and take you over there, because it is quite impressive.
What do you think about this idea? Let's all three of us, once we get a hold of them, see if we can go up there, meet them, and maybe we could do a remote show up there.
Oh my gosh, great idea, Rodney. What do you think of that, Kat?
That is an excellent idea. And even if we can't do it remotely, maybe we can just record it and play later.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
No, that sounds awesome. Yeah, Stephen. For those of you who don't know of Stephen Knapp, he's a Vedic specialist. He's written. Yeah, that's good grammar. He's written after, I think, well over 36 books. At least the last half dozen books have been mostly on the ancient mysteries of ancient India and the Vedic civilizations. And so he was actually my very first host on my very first Angkor Wat tour. And that was pretty cool, having a Vedic researcher with me, because what most people think of as those are many Buddhist temples, they in fact are not. They are a form of Buddhism called Mahayana Buddhism, which is actually a avatar of Vishnu, and not the Gautama Buddhism that we know of today, that I guess started about 2,500 years ago. But the Mahayana could be, thousands, if not, as with Michael Cremo, maybe millions of years ago.
Now,
Very interesting.
What kind of differentiations are there in that when we look at the historical record, when we look at like the Mahabharata and similar things? Are those Vedic? Are they Hindu? Where does that all fit in?
Well, Vedic is really Hindu. We call it Vedic because of the Vedas, and it's just much more ancient, but it was still some form of Hindu as we know it today. And the temples, most are Shiva. Some are Vishnu. There may be one or two that are Brahmas, and everything comes back to that. The Priya Vihar, that is way up in the northwest part of Cambodia on the Thailand and Laos border, it's Shiva, but so much more ancient carvings, and did not look like any of the other Angkor stuff. And it's a 4-level mountain temple, which is like nothing that at least that I am aware of in the Southeast Asia area.
Well, and I have to ask specifically, did you see the Stegosaurus?
Yes, I've seen it several times.
Please
and
tell us about
I've
that.
got a personal picture of it, actually, that I can put on our site. We've got a new Facebook site that'll be called Ancient Mysteries Revisited, to go along with the Ancient Mysteries International site. And yes, I will put that back on there again. It surely looks like a Stegosaurus. It is surrounded by other of the same possible time groups. We're planning another tour there April of next year, 2020, and I hope to have the Moscow University archaeologist Alexander Koltipin with us, and he has been there briefly and said the same thing. The Angkor temples, as you asked, the Sanskrit says they're less than 2,000 years old, but they have many carvings and such that are from a much earlier time. And did the dinosaurs roam with human beings?
I never even heard that there was a Stegosaurus found there in that region. There was?
No, a carving. There's a carving
okay.
in Angkor Thom at the Tapram Temple that's very famous, because all the mainstream researchers and archaeologists want to say it's some different animal, but any of us that grew up with looking at pictures of dinosaurs, it certainly looks like a Stegosaurus.
It has the spines on it. They're the leaf-shaped spines on its back. It's actually Rodney, if you have your computer there, maybe you can pull it up so you can see what it is that he's talking about. It's definitely a visual.
Yes, I will look that up right now.
Is it carved into a pillar or onto a wall?
It's on a wall, but it's on a corner. And there's like three, there's many, but there's three connected carvings. And those of you who have never been to the Angkor area, Angkor Wat itself, of course, is beyond incredible, but it's just one temple. Of course, it is one temple with more tonnage of stone than the Great Pyramid. But there's a plethora of temples that just have unlimited carvings, just maybe hundreds and hundreds of miles of carving. And Rodney's eyes are just bugging out as he's looking at the picture of the Stegosaurus.
Yeah, I just pulled this picture up, and there's no doubt about it. That's a Stegosaurus.
So what did you type in to search for that image so that those listening at home can kind of follow along if they would like to?
Go on Google and just search up Stegosaurus Angkor Wat.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, and it just pops right up the first image right there.
It has many images. In fact, it's got a...
Well, it looks like there's a series of images, which I'm going to pull up and see what other kind of animals are there.
Yeah, because there's three. He's got it. There's three different boxed carvings on that corner. We've been there many times. In fact, one time it was funny. We forgot to take the picture, and myself and our guest ran at top speed from the tuk-tuk to find the carving, and we just literally ran all over to prom, but we did find it. So it was a good workout, actually.
Now, for something like that people in the alternative archaeology arena may be aware of, like people may know about the carving, but for people that don't know about it, what is it that people, or that the mainstream say that it is supposed to be if it's not a Stegosaurus?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I've heard, a lot of people say it's some small animal, hippopotamus.
Especially like animals that would be in that region of the world.
Yeah, that's the biggest mystery is, okay, even if there wasn't a Stegosaurus roaming around 2,000 years ago, how did they know what it looked like? Because all we would have would be the fossilized skeletons. And, in just recent years, they've actually just put together what they think it looked like, probably in the last 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that marked? Is there a sign or an arrow or anything that kind of gets you into that general vicinity? Or is it something you just stumble across?
You just look for it, stumble, ask. Basically, most of those temples don't really have any kind of signage or anything. It's really nice. They're still pretty original as far as, dilapidated some, of course. Tapram is the one that's famous from Angelina Jolie's movie, where they filmed it with the trees growing out of the stone. And
what was that, Tomb Raider?
Yeah, Tomb Raider. And it's probably as famous as the Angkor Wat temple itself because of that. And they're reconstructing many of these temples because they are starting to fall down. And the sad part is when they do reconstruct it, the new stone, of course, is very shiny and white and really kind of doesn't fit in many ways.
Now, how many temples are in that region?
In the Angkor Wat Park alone, it's called the Angkor Archaeological Park. I couldn't really tell you. Like I said, I say a plethora. There's got to be dozens. And not all of them are the same age or the same carvings. There's some that have no carvings at all, yet are still super megalithic, and the heaviest stones are on the top of the walls and not on the bottom.
Okay.
Now that's an interesting tidbit that I had not heard before.
Yeah, when I was there with Hugh Newman and Andrew Collins were my hosts several years ago, that was what Hugh really noticed, because many of those temples there are literally identical to Mayan temples. And that's just what he picked up on one of the big ones. He said, my gosh, all the megaliths are on the top of the smaller stones.
Aren't they all in line, like worldwide too? Like these main temples? There's
a grid, and Angkor is one part of the grid. Maybe Kat knows more about the grid than I do, actually.
Well, the grid is said to sit upon ley lines. So where two or more ley lines would intersect, you have a position of power. And those are places where you have, like the Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Angkor Wat, the Mayan temples. And the lines connecting them all are various ley lines. So there is, if you visualize it, it's sort of like a net, an irregular net laying around the planet, and each place where the lines intersect is a diamond. And each of those diamonds are, in this day and age, considered to be worldwide power. They're worldwide heritage sites. They are places that people still revere, although not necessarily as they were revered in their initial incarnation.
Now, don't they coincide with the stars of the zodiac as well?
Now, that is
Like the
something that I have
positioning?
The
Okay.
Yeah, and Angkor alone, I can't wait to get back there with the geologist Alexander Koltepin. But Graham Hancock, many, many years ago, had a chapter in his book, Mirrors, Heaven's Mirror. And the chapter and the research he did that most all the temples in Cambodia and the Angkor area match up with the Draco star system, as you may know a little more about how the pyramids of Egypt seem to match up with the Orion star system.
Yes, and there has been debate over the years whether or not it is most closely aligned with Orion's belt or with Cygnus.
Yeah,
And
I know Andrew Collins is really big on the Cygnus thing.
yes, and Bouval is more so interested in the Orion correlation. But yes, and even if you want to go a little further afield to things that perhaps are not man-made, well, partially man-made, you have the star fields in Arizona that Gary likes to research as far as the mesas and where the different pueblos are located. Even things on a smaller scale than the pyramids or Angkor Wat seem to reflect the heavens.
Well, with Gary David's work, it's almost on a bigger scale because he has almost all those, not all, but so many of those ancient Anasazi sites that seem to match up with the Orion system.
Oh,
and Gary has a
absolutely.
book on, I forget, Mirrors of Orion, I think is the name of Gary's book.
I've
Yes,
done a little
and
bit of
the
research of
one
that.
I
And
have is Star Shines and Earthworks of the Desert Southwest.
Yeah, that was, but he did a really big with like hundreds of pictures, and I think it was Mirrors of Orion.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what I meant by saying on a lesser scale, not in land area or overall size, but I meant the actual structures.
Mm.
So the Pueblo dwelling is going to be significantly smaller than Angkor Wat,
Or a pyramid.
but not to diminish the overall scale at all.
I think the focus on Orion has to do with there is a major theory out there that Orion is an actual stargate of some sort. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, but I'd like to hear more.
Yes, Rodney. Let's hear this theory.
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on Orion and a lot of pyramids focused toward Orion because somehow certain theorists theorize that that is a stargate.
That's a cool theory, and I think I have heard something like that before. Because when you take your systems that, like your Draco, your Orion, your Cygnus, they seem to come up everywhere on the planet when people are researching these ancient sites and cultures.
Now, isn't the star Sirius close to the Orion belt?
I am not an astrologer or an astronomer.
Okay.
I unfortunately never learned any of the things that happen in the sky, so I can't help.
Well, you know, after this show, you can bring up your star app on your smartphone, and you can start studying this for the next interview, Kat.
I could. Probably not going to.
Yeah, I think Sirius is actually in the Orion system, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm certainly not an expert.
I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Sirius is right behind the Orion belt, which is weird because if you look at the Orion belt, there's 3 stars right next to each other. And a lot of UFO photos I've seen have the 3 lights next to each other.
Like the
some
pyramid
sort,
or
some
the
sort of code.
anchor shape.
Yeah, again, we get back to the mysteries are just unlimited.
Oh, it's wherever you want your mind to go.
Jeez, that's
true.
that's a possibility.
I've always been a proponent of, even if the arena is too much or not enough for a person. If you take a little bit of information, you can start extrapolating in almost any direction. And if you're not satisfied with what you're hearing or seeing, then make some theories of your own. They're no less valid.
That's good. That's, and myself and you had the show before. That was our main concept, and me and Rodney will carry that on, is we support almost all theories, because how are we going to get to the truth without them? When there becomes a problem is when people get angry at theories or decided that their theory is the only fact out there. And that is where usually we draw the line, because when we're dealing with stuff thousands of years old, it's very difficult to say what's an absolute fact.
Mm-hmm. And I'm all for inclusiveness versus exclusion. So if you can bring another theory in or pull another thread into what it is that you're doing, by all means do so. Search far, search wide, and draw some of your own conclusions, and then be willing to talk to other people about it. And like you said, but you have to have the mindset of open dialogue. You're not trying to force anyone else to believe what you believe. You're simply putting forth another theory that, again, is just as equal in validity as anything else someone can sit at home and come up with.
Right. This leads
It's a lot of fun.
This is evolving humanity's mind as a whole by expanding knowledge as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because and I hate to continually bash mainstream archaeologists, researchers who just do so much hard work and a wonderful job, but it seems we've created a paradigm that this entire evolution cycle is an absolute fact. We are the pinnacle of the history of mankind, and everybody was cavemen back then, and they built these structures that we would have a very difficult time today building with all our technology, with slaves, ropes, copper chisels, and again, that's ludicrous. I don't know what other word to use.
Well, my favorite theory is a lot smaller scale, in that it's specific to copper chisels. If you want to look at a structure such as the Great Pyramid, you may be able to say that someone using copper chisels was able to face out that stone and make it the size and shape that you wanted to. What you have to realize in doing that is that copper is extremely soft. And after very few, perhaps as few as 5 or 6 blows with a mallet to chisel the rock with a copper chisel, the chisel has to be replaced and reshaped to be used again. So you have to have someone standing there literally handing you off chisels every 7 to 12 seconds, depending on how hard you're working. Now, theoretically, you can make that happen. You can say that if you have enough people over enough time, you can do this with soft copper chisels. And there's not a whole lot of argument that anyone can make against that. What I like to look at in specific reference to copper chisels are the deeply inscribed walls of various temples and monuments, where the cut marks in the hieroglyphs, which may be smaller than 3 inches in size, are so clearly defined it looks like they were cut out with lasers. And if you were to make a copper chisel small enough in point to be able to do that work, it would be so soft and malleable that you could never take the first blow toward making that inscription. So, as big as the pyramids are, perhaps someone did use a copper chisel at some point to create them, but as tiny and detailed as the hieroglyphic carvings are, it is truly impossible.
Well, especially, I've not been to Egypt. You have. You can go into it a little more. I see that all those stelas and those big columns that just looking at pictures, you're just shaking your head in awe.
Well, the masonry and the joinery and the craftsmanship, even if you had a complete workshop set up with lasers and lathes, it's very, very difficult to replicate. And you had mentioned Chris Dunn. One of one of his directions that he was going in was the symmetry in carvings, in statuary in Egypt, and that you have a truly reflected left side, right side on a statue, and that even in modern art times, and with all of the skill that we have and the instrumentation that we have, a person cannot make the left side and the right side of a face completely, perfectly symmetrical. And yet in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, they did that, and they did it well, and they did it often.
Have there been any intricate tests with or using a copper chisel to try to replicate what they did in Egypt?
They have all failed and fallen short. In most cases, like the one where they were building the miniature pyramid, they gave up before it was finished.
Yeah, similar are the moving of the big stones. The Japanese many years ago had trouble building a good enough raft to move a single 1-ton stone over the river. And of course, many of the stones in the monuments like the Great Pyramid are anywhere from 3 tons to 200 tons. And I don't see how any kind of simple raft could possibly do that. People, I spent a lot of my life driving truck, and a full semi-trailer, which is 52 foot long, is 40,000 pounds. So that's how many tons? That's 20 tons. So when we start talking 200 tons, that's the weight of a building.
Now, when they moved this stone, I'm sure a lot of it failed transport. Are there any cut stone in that riverbed, do you think?
That's that's why we have Rodney here, because he's going to get us questions that we just have not thought of before. And that's just like you were saying, Kat, that's the great thing about the arena, is people can have so much input, and a single question could make the difference in a whole new line of research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Hey, you know why we're on theories in Egypt? When myself and yourself were cruising around the country doing conferences and tours and such, you had a great theory on the pyramids, something that you worked on with Mr. Nikolai Tesla.
Yes, he was very kind to me in our seances towards getting getting a theory. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of background that has to go into responding to that setup, Bruce.
Here you go. We've got about another hour, Kat, so just have at it.
So specifically, there is a place in Egypt called Saqqara. It's about half an hour from the Giza Plateau by car. And there are mortuary complexes. There's the step pyramid is there. But the main thing that was of interest to me and where we went is a place called the Serapeum. And the Serapeum is an underground network of tunnels that are actually more like chambers that were built in ancient history. Imagine, if you will, a long hallway, and every 20 to 50 feet, alternating off of each side, is an alcove that is big enough to very comfortably take the size of a VW bus, parked down each side. The Serapeum is set up similar to that, in that there's a main corridor, and then there are the rooms off to the sides. And in each of the rooms, or the alcoves off of the main tunnel, there are sarcophagi, maybe. They are giant granite boxes that resemble very much the sarcophagi that are used, or that we're familiar with in the funerary practices of ancient Egypt, except for the fact that they are massive. They are so much larger than a person that you could very easily get inside of it and stand up without hitting your head on the lid. The granite of these boxes is uniformly perfect. We have sharp edges, we have planed sides, we have things, each of these boxes were originally carved out of a single piece of granite. They each have lids that are moved off slightly to the side so that you can look down into the boxes, although there are a couple that the lids are still closed. There are some boxes that are no longer in one piece because at some point in history someone put dynamite under them and attempted to find out what sort of treasure was inside, and all of them have proven to be empty. The only thing that has been found inside of any of these boxes is bismuth, which is a leftover, possibly from the leaving of embalmed bodies for long periods. And because of the bismuth that was found in these granite boxes, and because of the size of the boxes, it was determined that each of these granite boxes was a sarcophagi for a sacred bull or an apis bull. And I think there are in excess of 20 of these granite boxes. Now keep in mind, in order for a bull to have been designated as an apis bull, it had to not only be born male, but it also had to have very specific coloring. It had to have very specific markings. Its mother had to have been struck by lightning, and I believe it needed to be born under a certain phase of the moon. So pretty specific parameters for an apis bull to exist, and yet we had over 20 of them that lived their life and required burial in the Serapeum according to modern archaeology.
And also, if I'm not mistaken, because I've read a lot on that also, there's not been bone one found in those of
no,
an apis bull.
The only thing that was found was bismuth.
Yeah.
That's it.
Is there
And
any
I
evidence that these were opened up prior to this current research?
Well, that's the next thing. Most of the ones, each of these boxes represent a mystery. And by all means, absolutely get online, look up Serapeum and Saqqara in Egypt, see these boxes. And one of the most common photographs, tourist photographs to take with the boxes is there's one box that you can climb down into the room where it is. And the lid is offset, and people stand at the end of the box and they put their hands up in the air. And some people can touch the lid, but some people can't, depending on your height. And then that's a really great tourist picture because it shows how big the box is. And unless you have a person standing there, there's no sense of scale.
Yeah,
So-
I got a photo up on my computer with that, one of those specific boxes, and the lid pretty much is length of somebody's arm above their head. Like, it's pretty
Yes.
high up there.
No, they're like that lid alone is something like 100 tons, correct?
I'm not sure on the weight, but
This says
what
each
is
box
true-
is an average weight of 70 tons,
70
which a
tons,
lid
wow.
of 30 tons. So, yeah, 100 tons.
Wow.
So each of those boxes are exactly as they were found, including with the lids pushed aside, except for the ones that were dynamited. And the reason for that is because of the confines of the alcoves in which the boxes are housed. It's a fairly snug fit. You can walk around them inside of their respective niche, but there's no room for any activity. There's certainly no room to have drugged them in there with a rope.
Yeah, it seems like they were built inside the room, like constructed within the room already.
But then again, how do you get this giant granite boulder that weighs more than 100 tons into the alcove to start with? And these boxes, these granite boulders that were the original thing that they carved the boxes out of, each one of them is different. Some of them are red granite, some are black granites, have different silica content. They are not something that existed there and was found during the excavation process and then carved in situ. They are all from somewhere else.
And like you said,
brought
70
there-
tons, a full size semi tractor with a gigantic engine in it. The most they're gonna is like, about 100 tons, if that. If that, 70 tons, correct.
So, because of the fit of the boxes, because of the fact that they were brought there, put underground, moved down the hallway, and put into these alcoves, there is no way for us in our modern day to move the boxes or even to lift the lids, because there is not enough room to gain the leverage that is necessary to apply the amount of force that is needed to lift the lids or move them.
So you're saying that Arnie Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno couldn't even do it?
I am saying they would need at least a third.
Now, what technology did they use to move these ever so slightly that they've been moved? Because these photos show them being moved just slightly.
The lids,
Yes.
we don't know. They're exactly as they were found.
Oh, okay.
Another ancient mystery?
Someone at some point had the way to relocate those boxes, to carve those boxes, to put those boxes where they are, to make the lid separate from the box. Just even the act of carving a line between the body of the box and the lid of the box is impossible based on weight, because anything that you use to cut through it would bind up under the weight of the stone itself.
Right. And since there's evidence that it was moved, somebody or some ancient culture moved this prior to anyone in recent times.
The discovery.
Correct. Yes, that is correct. So, here's where it gets interesting. Haha, that wasn't even the best stuff. After you go through the Serapeum and you have awed and you have marveled, you come to another hallway in which you have to transverse to the other side in order to exit. It's the way out. But the way out is blocked by another stone box. And this box correlates to an empty alcove elsewhere in the Serapeum. So you can extrapolate that this box was either being moved to its alcove or it was being moved from its alcove, but it was definitively in motion. Once you get past the box, which is blocking the entire hallway, in order to get past it, you have to turn sideways and kind of shimmy between the box and the wall to get to the other side. When you get to the other side, you face another obstacle, because there is the lid, separate from the box and also blocking the walk. So you have to go around it. They are very much in the appearance of a couple of toys that a child was playing with and got called away and simply sat them down and left. Now the hallway is not so high. It's not something that you would have been able to load this box onto a fork truck, raise it up, and then drive down the hall. And Rodney, I think you said you were looking at images, so you can kind of get an idea of the size of these hallways. They're not.
Yeah, they're pretty narrow.
Yeah, this isn't like a subway type tunnel. They're not.
It's just made for walking and walking.
It's made for walking. Yes, exactly. So, the theory that I have after all of this setup is that at some point there existed a technology that was able to be used and directed by people that was able to move these boxes and anything else of that size or smaller in a very specific, directed way that did not require heavy equipment, did not require ropes, did not require pulley systems, which accordingly the ancient Egyptians apparently did not have access to. So even if they would have had it, they couldn't have used it in the confines. So my theory is, when you place that in context with the damage to the Great Pyramid, which includes the twisting of the stones at the top, at the pyramid adjacent. It includes the blowing out of one corner of the black granite box that is inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. It includes the scorch marks that go up the wall of the Great Chamber. And to me, over a long period of time of research and of visiting these places and of reading the research that other people have done, I believe that the Great Pyramid was in fact a energy driver, that it either created or amalgamated energy from other places, and that energy was able to be directed into the moving, lifting, and transporting of stones. Yep. And I believe that when there was a cataclysm, whether it was external or internal, that functioning mechanism sparked off, it arced, it did something horrible, but it blew out the side of that box, it charred up the inside of the chamber, and as that box that was in the Serapeum was being moved down the hallway, the energy stopped, the box sat down, and it has never been able to be moved again.
That's cool. And isn't there legends of the Ark of the Covenant was in the Great Pyramid in that area at one time with the possible energy of that caliber?
What I have heard in relationship to that theory is simply that the Ark of the Covenant, the external dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant match the internal dimensions of the black granite box in the king's chamber. And we know that a lot of biblical history took place in and around that general vicinity, even into the New Testament. So I believe for some people it's not a very big leap to look at those dimensions and look at the potential for there having been an energy source, and it would solve a lot of mysteries if you could tie that all neatly together with a bow.
Yes, and if we could find that Ark of the Covenant, that's many believes
it's in Ethiopia.
Yeah. I've watched that documentary where Graham Hancock tried to get in that church and they would not let him in.
Just the one man who has to live there for his entire life. He's the only one that's allowed in.
Yeah, and goes blind before he reaches old age, and they have to replace him. And according to the story and legend, all the caretakers have gone blind from the energy that's in that church. So yeah, pretty wild. Yeah, that's a theory that I was talking about. Another theory, you used to give presentations when we were doing our conferences and such, but I like the new one, Kat. That's pretty cool. I was talking the energy grid of the line of sight pyramids that you used to discuss.
Well, that all ties in together.
Oh, okay.
So yes, if you are willing to accept that there was an energy source, or I'm not sure if it created energy or if it drew energy out of the atmosphere, or if the energy came from somewhere else and it simply was a substation, I don't know. I don't have a theory there. But in order for the energy to be passed from one place to another, according to, and this is when you were referring to Tesla, you have to be able to see the next stop on the energy train, basically. In Egypt, all of the pyramids are in line of sight with the next major pyramid complex. Therefore, if you do have pyramids that are being used for the transmutation of energy, it would make sense that from one to the next, it would transfer. Like going from Saqqara to Giza.
Well, that's where Tesla, the grid that he had going, and I think his main concept was like his energy center in Colorado, was he literally was able to draw energy from the vibration of the earth.
Well, I mean, his free energy theory is just that it already exists and it's already there. We're just not using it.
And
I don't hesitate at all to say that people in another time and place have used that. Whether they developed it through purely scientific means or if it was just an accident and they built on it from there, I don't think that it makes it any less of a viable theory.
Well, if you look at these ancient societies too, they were highly spiritual societies that was heavily involved with spiritual energies and just energy in and of itself. And the society we live in nowadays suppresses that knowledge. So I personally feel that it's that energy, or that use of free energy, is definitely out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and apparently being quelled because, like the story with Tesla, J.P. Morgan was his financer. He built the first tower. J.P. said, "Great, Nikolai. How do we measure that? How do we meter that to make money?" And Nikolai said, "Well, sorry, J.P., we don't." And that was pretty well the end of that to this very day.
Now, with that in mind, has there been any sabotage to these archaeological digs and finds because somebody possibly might be getting close to the answers?
I don't think you need sabotage when you have suppression.
That's true.
Yeah, because they have a lot of these sites blocked off now that I see all the time come online. You can't get in there anymore.
But it's really no different than the theory that people float about, and you probably actually are more familiar with this, Bruce, than I am, about all of the ancient skeletons that were found in North America, and everybody got shipped off to the Smithsonian, and now they simply just don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you can even see the old newspaper articles, many with actual pictures of these giant skeletons, anywhere from 7 foot to 12 foot. Apparently they did exist. They were given to the Smithsonian all over the country, if not the world, because I could go into the same over in Asia, and they just magically don't exist anymore.
They've all been lost.
Yeah, which unless they have this big room with all these skeletons somewhere and just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, isn't that in the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, there is. That's right. They do have. I think his name was Kincaid, and
yes.
Yeah, I was just talking to Gary David about that, and he said, if you look at all the articles and such, the cave itself was like mid between the ground and the top of several 100-foot cliff, and so very difficult to find for sure. They've tried drones and stuff too, but the winds won't let the drone stay there for any length of time.
Mm. Well, actually, since we've tied in the giants with Kincaid, do you want to give a little background on that story?
I'm not the expert on that story for sure, but back, I'm pretty sure it was early 1900s, could have been late 1800s. There was a man that found a cave named Kincaid that found all kinds of Egyptian artifacts in it, brought out to somebody from the Smithsonian and the museums and such, and there was many articles and such, and as the years went by, the cave just was never found again, and they've been searching for it for probably the past 100 years. Again, I think if you put Kincaid's Cave on Google, we'll see what Rodney comes up with. I'll bet something comes up. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, Gary, actually, he had a tour there expedition there with him, Christopher O'Brien, Chief Clifford Mahooty, the Zuni elder, David Childress, and some others, trying to find it, and they got close where it was supposed to be, but unless you can rappel down the cliff, it's going to be a tough one.
What'd you find, Rodney?
Still searching. Oh, it looks like there's a Egyptian sarcophagi found in these caves as well.
Yeah, like I said, you can do some research on that. There's many books, I'm pretty certain, on this subject, as well as newspaper articles and such. We'll ask when we have Gary on the show here, because he'll be coming up pretty soon. In fact, I'll actually mention this show maybe. I guess this show will probably be aired after that, but Graham Hancock is going to be with Gary in Sedona next week, I believe, on the 18th and 19th.
Sorry, I'm missing that.
Yeah, no doubt. And they also have some other guests there too. I'm not up on everybody that's going to be there, but there was supposed to be a tour that Mr. Cunningham was supposed to be the driver to go to Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde too, but I guess that got canceled. I'm still hoping to go there maybe by the end of this year and go with Gary, because I truly want to see both Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, and maybe even get Clifford and go over to Zuni.
Yeah, well, let me know what the dates are. I'd like to join you if I can.
Yeah, that would really be awesome because when we did that conference in Cottonwood a few years ago with Dr. Sam, Gary, Chris O'Brien, Sasha Lesson, that was just a wonderful event. And Clifford also being our guide for some of the local sites in Cottonwood and Sedona. That is, I can't tell the listeners enough if you've not been out to the central northern Arizona, New Mexico area. It's just spectacular.
It is.
I've yet to go out there myself. I've always planned on going to Sedona. I've heard some say it's a spiritual vortex there in Sedona, which is weird because
you can feel it.
It's weird how it connects with these Egyptian tombs that were found in the Grand Canyons.
Well, Gary's wife, when I was out there, looked at me and Katrina and said, "Gosh, everybody that moves to Sedona all turns crazy because of the energy." Yeah, and when you're around that red rock, I mean that's documented with meters and such of the energy that red rock does give off, the magnetics.
What do you mean crazy? They turned into like psychic readers and stuff?
That's crazy. One man's crazy is another man's. No, they just get, I guess, really intense and just go off on tangents, and just it really affects their life. I guess is a better word than crazy.
Yeah, I just said that as a joke because it seems like Sedona. At least I did a little bit of research. Sounds like it turned into a spiritual tourist trap.
Yeah, I'd say it is. But the beauty, we did our conference in Cottonwood, which is south of Sedona, but it overlooks Sedona. What they call those red rock is the Verde Valley, and Cottonwood is a fraction of the price. It's an old western town, and oh my God, we had so much fun. And the beauty is, it was Sedona without the cost and all the tourism of Sedona.
Mm-hmm. Much more low key, easygoing.
Yeah, I mean, all those towns out there. It's kind of neat how we grew up watching westerns. Prescott, Cottonwood, and Chino Valley. That's where Doc and Wyatt Earp and all those people that we've grown up as, the ancient cowboys all hung out and stuff. So it's pretty neat out there.
I have a friend traveling across the Southwest right now, and she was in Tombstone a couple weeks ago and was just talking about how much fun it was, and just that the energy of the place of Arizona is so much different than what she was experiencing in Indiana.
God, I can't argue that trip we had out there, everything we did, we went to all those sites, the Grand Canyon, and
it was mad.
And then when we finished up at the Garchin Monastery, I'll again, you can Google it up. It's the Garchin, with a G, Monastery in Chino Valley. It's up on the top of a small mountain. It overlooks the Verde Valley from really far away, maybe 100 miles. And we got to break bread with the Venerable Garchin himself, the second most holy man in Tibetan Buddhism, and the emotion in the room. Several guests were crying. It was quite amazing. We had a Russian guest that was a petroglyph specialist who was out there to meet Gary and see the petroglyphs. And she was looking at all of us, if you remember, Kat, and wondered, why are all these people emotional? That was pretty funny.
Yeah, well, your childhood in communist Russia is a little different than in other places in the world. I don't think she was prepared.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm still in touch with her. She, Natalia, she's pretty awesome. She's, as we used to say, I think she wrestles bears and swims with the beluga whales. And yeah, she's the true explorer. That's for sure.
She's living a life that the rest of us can but envy. Truly, good for her.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping to get out there. I mean, my bucket list is definitely to get out to St. Petersburg, visit her and Valerie, then go to Moscow, visit Alexander Koltepin, and get up to see Valerie's pyramid complex in Tomsk, Siberia. And for those, again, if you Google up Pyramid Complex, Siberia, or Tomsk, you'll get and see Valerie's project up there, and it's quite incredible. It's the biggest modern pyramid complex in the world, and I'd sure like to see that, especially in the summer, not definitely in the winter.
I would definitely like to go for the healing energy. I know that it's almost laughable at this point after we went through everything with, the pyramid energy movement. What was that in the late 70s?
Pyramid power.
Pyramid power. Yes. So it kind of gets a little poo-pooed now, but Valerie is taking that theory and making it large scale so that people can go and experience the changed energy that exists within the form of a pyramid. Not only can you eat and have your daily life within a pyramid, but you get to sleep there, you get to bathe there, you get to have all of your social interactions there, and you get to meditate on your own health and well-being to experience the benefits of that change in energy externally and internally. And to me, that just sounds like a dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, when Marta Thomas had the very first annual, and I believe she'll be having the third annual here pretty soon, if I think she just did, of the Global Pyramid Conference, there were several international groups that come out with the same theories about that pyramids were for healing. Two of them backed John Shaughnessy's pyramid gravity force theories too. So I can't wait to have John on the show. And John will also be with us next April. We are planning another Angkor Wat tour. We will have Alexander, John, a Vedic specialist, Bebhu Dev Misra. Valerie will be there again, and it sounds like a really good time. We will also have a side trip add-on to Laos Plain of Jars.
Oh, very good.
Now, Bruce, didn't you say Valerie will be on our show coming up soon?
Yes, Valerie will be a guest here coming up very soon, maybe our next guest. We'll see how it goes. He's about 7 hours ahead of us in St. Petersburg, Russia, but Valerie's a very close friend. I got to have him spend a week at my home in Camotes Island in the Philippines after our conference last in 2017. We did a Angkor Wat tour with Valerie, Danny Irwanto, Dr. Sam, Frank Jasovs, Tonya Madenford. Then we did a 4-day conference in southern Philippines, and we added Klaus Dona to that list, and we just had such a good time. Valerie spent an extra week with me and went around the island looking for the best energy spots for pyramids, and he told me the back of my land was one, so maybe.
I'm looking at his pyramid complex here online, and did he construct this all himself?
I mean, I'm sure he had builders, but yeah, all his design, 100% his design.
That's a fascinating design. Wow.
Yeah, he built his first one in St. Petersburg. It's still there. That's a single pyramid, and this complex, it's not supported by the government, but the government is on his side, I guess, on all this. It's really created some economic help for Tomsk.
Okay.
And again, the winter time, hopefully it's creating some heat. Siberia, I'm sure, gets pretty cold there.
That's the rumor.
So what's in your plans in the future here, Kat? Like I said, we have not talked in over 2 years, so let's hear it.
Oh my goodness. Right now I am focusing on health. I've had some setbacks over the last couple years with various chronic illness diagnoses, and so at this point in time I am expending all of my energy on being well and getting well.
And that's important. I think that's one of the problems, especially in Western society. We get caught up in money so much that we forget what's truly important, and it's our health, our happiness, our families, and that's it.
It wouldn't make any difference if I had $20 million if I'm so miserable I can't enjoy it.
Yep,
very true.
That's what some people. I have friends that have businesses in the same boat. They're so focused on making money, they're not realizing, hey, you're getting older. It might be time to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. You worked so hard. Now, what's the reward?
Correct. Yeah, I see it. I see it very close to me, actually.
Well, we hope your state of health currently is at a good state.
Well, we're going to come up there. Like I said, me and Rodney are going to have to come up and visit with you and Steven, and we'll just see.
No, well, I will have bells on. It'll be awesome.
Yes, like I said, you can take us to some of your really cool haunts, because I'm sure me and Rodney would like to try a local microbrew if we could. That's just a thought.
Oh,
and some
goodness.
local food. I hear there's a good food scene going down right now in Detroit.
That's exactly what I was about to say. If there is anything in this world that you have ever wanted to eat and you wanted the best possible version, you are going to find it in and around Detroit.
Nice.
I am not exaggerating. We went out to dinner with friends last night, and we went to a Senegalese restaurant. So food from the African country of Senegal. It doesn't get any more specific than that. Like, who has a Senegalese restaurant and you're not in Senegal? So it was amazing, and the food was good. The company was great. The environment was perfect. So yes, if you want to have a really good dining experience, come to Detroit.
Jeez.
It's going to happen here.
What
sounds great.
What a comeback. I mean, like, we can't say enough, on the news for how many years, how terrible Detroit was. And, to hear this comeback, it's only 2.5 hours from where me and Rodney are sitting. So my gosh.
Yeah, it sounds like a major cultural melting pot right now.
It is. It's incredible. It is just incredible. And again, the thing I cannot emphasize enough is Detroit is safe.
That's key. I mean, by me living where I live in Southeast Asia, we get all this propaganda how dangerous these places are. I mean, there's more people killed in Chicago in a week than probably the entire Philippines in a year, or any of these countries. So, what do we put as safe parameters?
Well, there's a misconception where if a city's run down, it's going to be violent. And I don't know. There might be a point where there is violence, but things are being reconstructed there and rebuilt. And I think the name needs to be rebuilt as well.
Yes, and the people of Detroit are proud. They are proud of their city. They are proud of the fact that when everything went to heck, they stayed and they survived, and they are building it back up again. And they have every reason to be proud. And you have industry that is happening here. You have the arts. You have humanities. You have science happening. You have technology happening. There's history here. And
yeah, it's crazy because Detroit, at one point... sorry, continue.
No, I was just...
I was going to go along with what you were saying about there's a history there. Detroit used to be the richest city in America at one point.
The Motor City?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. I mean, well, since I've come back, I've been back less than a month in Fort Wayne, and I'm in awe of the economy. Things are just absolutely booming here. It's a really good, good feeling to see the positive energy of jobs that used to pay minimum wage are now paying a livable salary. And this is just in a 2-year period, so
yeah,
quite
you
impressive.
picked a great time to come back, Bruce.
Yeah, quite impressive. Now, hopefully I'll be able to leave again and go to some more ancient sites that I haven't been to and see that again. I've been to Angkor, but I love going there for people. I can't say enough about those temples. They compete with any ancient sites. And Siem Reap, Cambodia may be the funnest city in the world, as it has more restaurant bars than anywhere I've been. And the prices, food is very cheap. Beer is 50 cents a mug, so yeah, that becomes dangerous, but still fun.
There's something for everyone.
Yeah, as I said, it caught you again safe. Is every place I've been in Southeast Asia is very, very safe. For it not to be safe, you'd certainly have to go in the wrong place or have a terrible attitude.
Seems like a great
It's not
place
going
to
to sneak
retire.
up on you.
Yeah, definitely a good retirement place. It's all tropical, so it's always warm. I definitely like that. I guess your winter this year was pretty nasty.
Oh yeah, it was
Bruce?
horrible.
If you don't mind me interrupting, speaking of Southeast Asia, because I honestly don't know the answer to this, did you make it to Nam Madal?
No, I've not made it to Nam Madal yet. That is in the next 2 years, guaranteed. There is a new airline from Manila that is much, much cheaper. So it is in the immediate bucket list vicinity. I guarantee you that, because I want to go there, and I would love to stay several weeks in the entire Micronesia area, because those other islands have ancient sites too. So it'd sure be cool. Yeah, that's.
Well, I know I'm the one that mentioned it, but you're the subject matter expert. So can you tell us what makes Nan Madol a special place worthy of being on the bucket list?
Okay, if those will Google up, all you got to do is Nan Madol. It's in the middle of the ocean in Micronesia, on Pohnpei, Micronesia, and it's just like Easter Island. You have this megalithic city made out of what's the andesite, and I can't say enough of it because I'm just looking at pictures, but it just is incredible. And the andesite looks very much like Gunung Padang in Java, Indonesia, that has been dated to over 25,000 years old. And it's just something that very few people, I only know one person that's ever been there, and that would be Alistair Coombs, who is also a speaker at the Angkor Wat and the Philippine Conference. So yeah, it's just keep listening. I guarantee there will be a tour there soon.
Okay.
Well, that pretty much wraps up this episode, our first episode. It was a pleasure talking with you, Katrina.
I'm so glad to have been here. Thank you, Rodney.
Anytime, and you're more than welcome to come back whenever you feel like it.
Woo! I'll see you next Sunday.
Yeah. As soon as we have certain guests on, we'll have you as a third co-host. That's
that'd be fun.
I would love that.
That'll be jamming.
Thank you for including me.
All right. So, hey, we will talk to you later. I will give the microphone back to Rodney. I enjoyed talking to everybody and Kat, and we can't wait for the next episode.
All right. Peace out.
That was Bruce Cunningham, and I'm Rodney McGillvary. Our guest tonight was Katrina Hutchins, and we are Ancient Mysteries Revisited. We look forward to seeing you again every Monday and Wednesday evening at 2 a.m. on Welts 95.7 FM in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Coming to you worldwide, streaming online.